What we talked about last time too is pruning a tree for storms. Okay, make it short and sweet and quick. It's bogus.
It's a pure straight up money grab.
Right, it's AJ with Hippie Fertilizing. We are jumping back in and back with Eric Putnam, BCMA, talking more about trees. What's going on, Eric?
Going great. How you doing?
Doing really well.
All right.
I know last time we talked about having bacteria that's all over the tree that fixes nitrogen in the atmosphere, feeds it to the tree. That's freaking awesome. And you told me something in the last episode that I kind of knew. I swear, every time I talk to Eric, it's like he confirms my theories because I don't know all this stuff the way he does, but I know enough to make really good speculations, right? And you told me about the stomata staying open when there's low humidity and high heat. And so it's basically sucking out the moisture out of the tree faster than it can even be absorbed from in the ground, right? Blows my mind. So, and then to kind of reiterate again, something from the last episode, watering a tree. About 5 gallons every other day. Ooh, so sorry. So deep watering is not that effective for one?
No. So all the feeder roots that take in the water of the tree are typically in the 4 to 6 inch range. So when you put water past 4 to 6 inches, you're putting water past the usable part of the tree.
Okay.
So there's no such thing as deep watering.
So and this leads me into something, because I get asked for it all the time. I think that there's lots of things in probably any industry, but in ours, that are sold, right?
Yes.
Like what we talked about last time too is pruning a tree for storms. Okay, make it short and sweet and quick. It's bogus.
It's a pure straight up money grab.
Right.
Because there's no need and reason for it.
It is strictly a sales pitch that is useless.
But it took years of peer-reviewed papers saying that it was okay and that it was a myth, that mass damping was actually a myth. Now you see in the last 4 or 5 years, there's more information, more peer-reviewed paper on these trees because they have these supercomputers now that they can attach these sensors to. And they now know without a doubt the stress the tree goes through when all the limbs are removed out of it.
Well, and just from some basic understanding of wind and trees and how the, let's say, the physics of it works, right? The more tree coverage, the more leaf coverage you have, the more likely you are to force that wind over the tree.
It actually doesn't work like that. You want to know how it works?
Okay, break it down. Yes,
Okay.
Absolutely.
So here you got a tree with a bunch of limbs, right? And this tree's never been pruned.
Okay.
So when the wind's blowing, it's actually like this. It's just every limb is doing its own thing, moving differently, right? In regards to what the neighbor's doing. So there's very little energy that's transferred to the main stems or the trunk or the roots, right? So
you said very little energy?
Very little energy because this one
it's like
cancels.
a bunch of shock absorbers.
No, what happens is this one swings this way, this swings this way, so this energy's canceled out, literally canceled out. This one swings because of this one and it cancels it out. So the whole entire tree is moving at a different direction. You look at it with your naked eye and it looks like the tree is but what you're really looking at is the tree moving like this, right? So it's canceling all this information, all of its energy out. So then you go start taking most of the laterals off the branches, right? You have the main branch and then you have the laterals, right? And the laterals, they change the way that limb moves, right? So now you cut it, and now you have lion's tailing. You can imagine all these are lion's tailing, right? And now the limbs are kind of, and the wind's blowing, and now they're all kind of moving together like this. Now all the energy is transferred to the trunk, to the roots, And what it does is now it causes these micro fractures in the limbs that you can't tell. And if the storm doesn't break the limb out of the tree immediately, the limb usually falls out a couple of months later and no wind at all. It just falls and lands on the ground.
Well, and what you see often, especially with like Arizona ash trees,
Right.
is there will be a whole thing of fungus in there ripping that thing apart, and you never know it until that tree is on your driveway or your car or your house.
Well, that wouldn't have the white rot fungus because the ash trees are really particular to pruning. So the Arizona ash trees have never been pruned. Literally, we're working on some ash trees that are over 100 years old.
What?
They've been planting them in Houston for a while, right?
Right.
And they're 6-7 feet in diameter and perfectly healthy, right? But they've had the same person or the same group of people living in that house that, they've never messed with it, never touched it. They're just as big as any giant live oak and in perfect health.
No kidding.
Most every ash tree completely has been topped from the 60s on. So you don't even see an ash tree today in somebody's yard that hasn't been topped. We're talking about at least 2 or 3 times where they cut every single limb
Right.
and left it.
I've done it.
Right.
When I had my business.
Right. And so have we. We are guilty of topping thousands of ash trees, but we didn't know. We didn't know the technology, and they didn't have the supercomputers available to us now and all that to be able to tell us exactly how mechanically it would hurt and harm the tree. But the problem we did is we spread white rot in the tree with every cut that we make. So there's probably not an ash tree alive except for those few that we're working on that doesn't have white rot. So that doesn't fall under the same category of limb breaking that it does, say, if you had a perfectly good red oak group tree and you went and thinned it out and now it's dropping branches.
Gotcha.
That's two different kinds. The branch phenomenon I'm talking about is what they call summer branch drop.
Summer branch drop
is related to over pruning, believe it or not, and related to over pruning and previous storm damage months after the storm. And people are like, oh, you know what I'm saying? And it's hard for them because they don't think trees are living, so they don't think it in a conscious way. They don't think that they think it's like your car parked in your yard. And the tree doesn't exist until they have to look at it or the tree caused the problem.
And I laugh a little bit. It almost also makes me kind of sad when you say people don't think trees are living or they don't see them as living. Like, dude,
it's a statue in their yard.
They are literally living, breathing. They are a part of a whole, like, microscopic, huge community that is way bigger than we can even imagine on like a microbial scale and biology. So much is going on with one tree. It is a massive community for every tree.
Well, the plant, I would say that in my observation, this is not a scientific observation, and I'm not a PhD in physiology or anything like that, but I would have to say that I think the plant kingdom, the plants are far more complicated than the animal kingdom.
Oh, that's
right. But we're walking and talking and everything, and we're high performance machines. No doubt, any animal is right compared to a tree. But I think the trees. Well, let me just give you an idea. So we have 5 categories of hormones in trees.
Okay.
15,000 cataloged jobs. 15,000, and that was a quote from 2017. So they're probably a lot higher than 15,000 cataloged jobs that these hormones do. Right. It's nowhere near like that. It's not even 1%. The animal world, husbandry or human or whatever, they don't have 1% of them cataloged like that.
Really?
Compared to how many they have cataloged on trees.
To me, that kind of makes a little bit of sense when you tell me that, because let's take something like, I know like minerals and stuff play a big role in both our biology and hormones and things like that, and plant biology, and something like magnesium. They say it's responsible for 400 plus mechanisms in the body, right? 400's a lot. But when we're talking
15,000
plant hormones. That's what you said,
Five
right?
groups.
Five groups.
There's groups, and then there's hundreds of subgroups under each group.
But then, take those 5 groups and put it into 15,000 different things that it's responsible for. That's exponentially more, right? That's crazy. And to some degree, like, we can talk. We have different ways to communicate, right? That are visual, audible, things like that. Whereas plants, at least we can't hear it if they make noise.
We do know they make noise, and we do know that they feel pain. According to The Hidden Life of Trees, that guy was a PhD in forestry in Germany, Wilbrick.
For the average people like us,
right?
I don't hear a tree, right? What I'm getting at is that the way they communicate is tons and tons of chemical signaling, right? We don't have chemical signaling.
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do?
All of our signals are chemical.
No, but I mean between me and you.
Oh, unless we spit on each other. Oh, there goes some spit. So they're going to see it on the film. That's so funny.
Gross.
That's okay. I'm fine.
If I go like this and smack them with some sweat, we got some chemical signaling, right?
Yeah.
I'm hot.
Yeah, and there is a lot of chemical signaling between humans. So you can pick up their pheromones, and you can decide if you like a guy or a girl instantly, without even having to speak any words. That's chemical signaling.
Okay, true.
Okay, right. So
with
there's
plants,
a lot of chemically
there's exponentially more.
Right. They're way more complicated than we are, I think.
Yeah.
We're more high performance and more, it's a different kind of biology, but I think as far as all the different pieces, to me, it seems like the plants are way ahead of it.
And something I'd like to add to that is, I hope, I pray sincerely that we all start to be curious and to see that we're so interconnected with the plant kingdom. Like, we're on planet Earth, right? We come almost literally out of the soil like a tree does. Yes, we come from a womb. I get it. We don't have to go all there, but our makeup is similar. And without this plant kingdom and without soil biology and things like that, our life on Earth wouldn't happen, And I want us all to see that, to feel it, because as much as I think technology and everything is awesome, right? Let's not forget that we need to be really connected with nature no matter what.
I read on several different papers. Of course, I'm not the scientist that did this, but they say 55% of our DNA is plant material. That's 55% of our DNA. Of 100% of our DNA, it's 55% is plant related. And then there's a certain part of that in that situation is fungal related.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
super fascinating. And so I want to jump on to something that we were talking about earlier before the start of the episode. Is it is becoming so much more popular for people to have artificial turf. I don't like it. And not just because I have fertilized grass. I could care less on that aspect, right? But there's so much more that we're taking away from, again, nature, from soil. But now you were telling me some stuff on how does it take away from trees and the lawn?
Okay. I haven't installed a artificial lawn myself, so I haven't worked it, so I don't have the experience exactly of how it's done through like personal experience. However, I've done a lot of reading and I've done a lot of research. Then again, theory and practice are two different things. But it appears that what they do is they come in, they cut all the roots out of the tree that's above the ground or below the ground a little bit. And then they come in here with this stabilized material and they'll tamp the ground with a machine and they'll tamp all the air out. Compaction, right? Remember, compaction is a really strong killer for trees.
And for all things,
right, everything,
in the soil.
Right.
Yeah.
So they compact the soil and some companies will use a cement-based sand, so that makes it like hard as concrete. Some people will use decomposed granite. That's a little bit better.
of a
Right.
permeable
A little
surface.
bit more
Yeah.
permeable, but they don't. Most of the companies are strictly, and I don't know which ones are. So this isn't about the companies that are doing it. We're just saying that then they put it on there. So what you have is basically a concrete pad within an inch of the trunk of the tree, all the way around the tree, all the roots and everything. And those trees end up getting diseases and dying within 2 to 5 years of the
Turf
the
installation.
turf installation. Yes.
Uh, so in you see that on the arborist side,
Right.
right? Something that I see on my side, and it's not just artificial turf. I'm going to take this further, right? Because I have customers all the time and people make jokes like, oh, I just wish everything was concrete,
Right.
right? And we live in the Houston, Texas area. One of our biggest problems when we're not in the middle of a drought is flooding, right? We go from one extreme to the other. We need every permeable surface we can get to reduce the flooding, to grab some of that moisture, to grab some of that before it becomes runoff, right? Because as more and more and more development happens, we are we're creating problems, right? And then we're saying that it's like an environmental thing, but yet here we are, we just changed the whole environment, right?
Right. So
And like something I kind of want to go back to or reiterate, because and I'm not trying to bash like you any one specific company or anything like that. I think artificial turf can have its purposes. It can be really cool, but don't let a person tell you it's not going to damage the tree, right? Because it can.
it will.
It will.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, there's theory and there's practice. Well, when you go out and you look at multiple tons of trees,
Aftermath. Yes.
right? Then that's not theory anymore.
Well, the theory, that's not theory for me, but it would be theory on how because I've never watched these guys install one.
Uh-huh.
Right. So,
And I have a theory though of my own because I've read many articles on like our health and how artificial turf impacts our health. They say that areas where it's either sports fields or playgrounds and things like that where people and or children are on them on the regular all the time do have much more instances of endocrine problems, hormonal problems because of the chemicals that
like
get
VOCs, right? The volatile something chemicals that they that's why you can smell it.
right
Yeah.
that it's giving off.
Right.
Those things go up tremendously exclusively like for those groups of people that are on them often.
Mhm.
And then even in sports, the amount of injuries go up because it doesn't have as much give as a natural turf, right? You can still have injuries anywhere for sure, but the amount of injuries on artificial turf does go up because it's not going to have the same give.
I also know a little bit about sports field installations, and their substrate underneath the turf is a lot softer and designed for impacts, right? Whereas, you know, the budget for a residential yard, and everything they have to do to make that a soft impact, it's much easier to just so the turf can stay nice and clean and straight and beautiful and under warranty, that they stabilize it all.
Right.
And hard, and very hard stabilization.
Well, and for distinction, right? They're for very different purposes. If it's on a lawn, it is for aesthetics, right? Not pretty much strictly aesthetics. And downside that I see, and the more I listen and read about it, is that they still even recommend for you to keep an irrigation system because that stuff gets extremely hot during the summer. Whereas grass, you can walk on grass all year long.
It's cool.
And you're never going to burn your feet.
No, it's actually cool. Yeah.
Right. you're never gonna burn your feet on real grass. Whereas you can burn your feet or whatever if you're rolling around on artificial turf. So they tell you to run irrigation to cool it down. Crazy, right?
Yeah, it's artificial turf in places that if you never had a tree in your yard and then you plant a tree in artificial turf, then that tree's going to be fine.
Because it's used to that
It's
environment.
creating its own environment. Whereas the other way around, where the tree was used to a much freer environment, then that's when you damage and kill the tree. So there's different ways you can have trees in an artificial turf. It's not like that can't exist. It's just when you take a very mature tree, a 30, 40, 50-year-old tree, put that around there, just
I can just imagine because you go to scrape off so many roots, right? And the shock that a tree will go through. And this is for any kind of thing. It wouldn't just have to be artificial turf, but if you go scraping off the top of a layer of roots,
grass, yeah.
Yeah, or to resod a lawn. Oh, I hate it. On my side of the industry, oh, well, we're just going to resod it. I'm like, I could top dress this lawn and feed it and get all your grass to grow back, or at least most of it. Whereas it seems like half the time or more, someone resods something, they have the same issue in 6 months to a year anyway.
Well, if it's underneath an oak tree that has an allelopathic chemical poisoning of the grass, it's about 18 months.
About 18 months?
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, another thing we discussed in the past, and I'm going to be monitoring this because it takes a long time to see things play out, right? Or at least for me, a year or 2 years is like a long time. I don't get to see results and give a definitive answer on some things so quickly. And you had mentioned before back in the 60s and 70s or 70s to 80s, there was so much less problems, right? And diseases, fungal issues, chinch bugs, all across the board, right?
Right.
But something that we've discussed in the past, and I still see it all the time. You get calls for trees or for the lawn and treat this and treat that and treat this. It's like adding sand, right? And top dressing the lawn and adding soil to the lawn, because we have erosion no matter what all the time, is like a lost art. My dad, my dad kind of maybe. Every place.
I like his truck.
Huh?
I like his truck.
He's got a friggin' Ram TRX. It's pretty bad. However, everywhere we moved when I was little, he would bring in a truckload of freaking sand. Right? Now, he used other products I'm not very fond of, but I'll tell you what, my dad always had some nice freaking grass, but something that he always did was bring in that truckload of sand. And so sometimes over the years, I've joked that, his little passion I've turned into my job. Yeah, he always wanted a nice lawn, and now I'm out here trying to help people make nice lawns. I just want to do it in a way that goes back to nature, right? Versus this treat and defeat mentality.
Right.
So hopefully y'all have picked up some good information here. Again, this is Eric Putnam, board certified master arborist. Okay. Yeah, I like to say it nice and loud. Dude has more experience than so many of us combined. And we can really take a lot and utilize it. But my kind of getting people away from the what I like to call the treat and defeat mentality. Kind of before we leave this, would you say that you want to encourage people to stay away from fungicides and herbicides, right? I know we see problems on a lawn, on a landscape, and to me, what I see all the time is their first instinct is to treat it.
So my wife is an ER nurse, and she has to tell her patients that you can't treat yourself off Google. You cannot, unless you have experience behind it, and that 10,000 hours is so important, right? There's lessons you learn. You, as a resident, you cannot possibly, as the residents in the whole entire mass of residents, there's a few outliers and some guys that are pretty brilliant. In fact, I saw one the other day. He's perfect, dude. He has a Bermuda lawn that tall. And his lawn's just beautiful. But anyway, but that's not everybody. That's like 1 in 1,000 people that can do that, right?
Yeah.
And but you have to have he had a background in that when he was in college. So he had the ability to be able to know what he was Googling was right. If you don't have a background or a form of knowledge, then what you find on Google can get you steered very wrongly.
So something I've learned in my journey of doing this, even before I met you, but then something you kind of helped in your own way inspire after I met you, is how to ask questions is super important, right? Because I love, this is my primary example. You ask how to fertilize a lawn versus how to feed soil, you're going to get vastly different answers. So instead of Googling how to fertilize a lawn, I encourage everybody to start Googling how to feed soil.
Actually, we need to refine it down, because that is there's so much negative stuff about that it's unlikely they'll find, because they don't have the experience. It's unlikely they'll find the right information. So what they should be looking for, is something called the soil food web. Okay, and when they Google anything for how to feed the soil, they put into the Google search soil food web, and the soil food web, is thousands of arthropods. It has worms like nematodes, fungi, bacteria, and they're all eating each other, and they're all working together in a unison, just kind of like a city, right?
Right.
And they're making sure the soil stays perfect. And that's the point why you put some organic into the soils to feed most of those. Remember, a tree or grass, they can't take anything in that's organic. All the stuff that you do, all the stuff I do isn't for the grass or the trees per se. It's for the microbes that turn around and do the work for us.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
So every time you put a chemical down or a fertilizer down, you're directly affecting the tree, but the tree doesn't want that interference. It does not want fertilizer from Scott's or whatever, triple 13 or whatever the most popular. They doesn't want that, because what happens is you could tell that by the way the tree overgrows its genetic potential. So when you let the bacteria and the microbes and the soil food web take care of the tree, then the tree grows to its genetic potential, right? So there's a distinction between that. Though a lot of people will probably have a hard time understanding, because there has been thousands and thousands of businesses throughout their whole entire life that want to make that real quick money, or they don't know, but they know what the general public knows, so they repeat what the general public knows so that they can get a job, instead of doing something like what I do, where sometimes I leave a job, the customer's not convinced that I can do what I say I can do, and that's fine. You know what I'm talking about? But
I do. I get that with core aeration all the time. And then sometimes I'll go back with the public, right?
Right.
And then a few months later, I'm hitting my head going, because I'm thinking, AJ, you know better.
Yeah, you just can't sell yourself out when you know what's right. It's hard to convince the people, because there's so many charlatans out there that want to make the money. It's called the mirroring effect. So you have a customer, right? And you want this customer's money. You want to work for the money. You're not trying to rip them off, right? But when the customer calls you and asks you questions, you want to mirror that customer so that you and them build a bond, so they'll spend their time and money with you, right?
Well,
and I don't do that. You know what I'm saying? They call me out there. They want to know what the situation is. I coldly and dryly tell them that this is the problem.
Right.
Well, Mr. Putnam, I don't use herbicides. Well, somebody uses them.
Right.
Because let me tell you why. So this, and this is why we know it's herbicides. And then eventually they admit that they use herbicides.
True. Kind of to lead it back as we end, though, okay? I want to leave you with this. Because in his own way, Eric did teach me this. You feed it, you don't treat it. And that's what he does with humic acid molasses. That's what I do with a lot of humic acid molasses. So we'd always want to support soil biology, healthy trees, healthy turf, and feed it. Don't treat it. All right. Y'all have a super groovy day. We'll catch you next time. Peace. Hey everybody, it's AJ with Hippie Fertilizing. We are here to help fix your lawn. Does it currently look brown, dead, dry, patchy? We'll call it Hippie. We can help turn it around. And one of the best ways to do that is with our Hippie Juice Plus application to revitalize your soil, your turf, and help give you a lush green lawn you're looking for. Please fill out our contact form at hippiefertilizing.com because nobody knows grass like a hippie. Peace.